I want to talk about see, without obstacle here, I wanted to see which one I want. Actually, here's what I want to do. I want to do this, Kiko. Present Toys Ghostbusters. I want to talk about this because this is going to be one to me that, and there goes my alarm for lights, camera, Kiko collect. The Ghostbusters that were teased here, I've not seen anyone actually list them for sale yet, Kiko. But what I have seen is photos shared, right? And we got a Bill Murray Ghostbuster here from Present Toys, who Present Toys have made some pretty good figures. I said in my recent video, they made that Indiana Jones. They've made a bunch of other stuff too, and I simply cannot remember what else they've made and put out there, but people seem to really like them, and they are definitely on people's radar. They also made the other character from Ghostbusters, which has cornrows, apparently. So, Kiko, you're going to have to fill me in on this one because I'm not the biggest Ghostbusters guy. I've seen Ghostbusters, the original. I've seen the Afterlife film, which I really, really like the Afterlife film. But I know there are greater Ghostbuster fans out there than I. Again, we do not have a price on this one yet. As far as I'm aware, I've not seen it anywhere. If someone can point it out to me, I'll happily bring it up on the screen. But Kiko, fill me in on your thoughts on these Present Toys Ghostbusters, because the Blitzway ones have become absolute grails, very much hard to find. But these ones are maybe good substitutes for collectors. What's your thoughts here? I think this should be fun.
Well, let's get out of the gate right now and just address the elephant in the room. This is a travesty. It really is. So I'm going to do a little bit of gatekeeping, if that's okay. And I don't want to be that person to be like, oh, you know, I want to have this and you can't have it. But because I've said that before, is like one of the points of why I collect is because I want things that other people can't have. You know, I love that about I love exclusivity. I love smaller batches, things that are harder to acquire. The Blitzway Ghostbusters are those. We know that they were extremely limited runs. They are extremely expensive on the secondary market. And then everybody out there says, reissue. I want the Ghostbusters. I want some. And then I'm not going to be the person that, if you saw Afterlife and you're like, wow, I really like the Ghostbusters franchise, this is cool, I'm on board. And I would love to be able to have the original Ghostbusters. I'm not going to be the person that says you can't be a fan of Ghostbusters. What I am going to say is that you should never, in perfect timing opticals here, what I am going to say is that things that mean something to you and really strike a chord in your heart, those are the things that you do need to pony up for, because this is not an accurate representation of what the Ghostbusters are. Because one, we have Peter Venkman as Mark Ruffalo. Let's go back to the Venkman figure, you know, the Bill Murray. I don't know who that is. That's Mark Ruffalo. That's not that is not Bill Murray. And some people say that the Bill Murray sculpt on the Blitzway is the weakest of the four. And I would agree that the Venkman Bill Murray figure is probably the weakest of the four. But now go back to and also what the hell is going on with his like body proportions and his neck? That's a travesty as well. The wand, everything on it just screams cheap. And everyone's like, well, I just need to be able to put this hole in my collection and fill this hole in my collection. Fill your hole with a piece that actually is worthwhile. You know, that sounds wild.
Yeah, that sounded wild.
Yeah, that did not sound right.
Optical came at the perfect time.
But here's literally is that I understand that there's some things that are out of people's price range and say, you know what, I am not dropping $700 per figure for this. I get that. But if these are the definitive Ghostbusters, you figure out a way to get them in your collection at some point. Maybe it's, hey, I'm not gonna pre-order, you know, Shang-Chi and Wen-Wu or whatever it is so I can get these. You just have to kind of prioritize it. You're like, well, I just can't justify that. Well, if you cannot justify having definitive versions of these figures, you end up with this Winston. Let's go back to him again.
Okay.
Why does it look like he got punched in the face, for one? And why does he have fucking cornrows?
It does look like he has cornrows.
Who is that? And that also, that Winston looks like he's 30 years older than when he's a Ghostbuster. This looks like it's a today sculpt of Winston, and that does not look right to me. I was like, what is wrong here? And then you just look at the tailoring and you look at the way it's a cheap knockoff, because that's what it is. This is not licensed, and it looks like a guy wearing a Spirit Halloween costume is what it looks like.
Damn.
And so I know there's some people that are like, I'm not paying that much money for it. And then people may look at me and point at me and say, well, damn, Kev, I thought, why don't you just pony up to Carlos and pay the real price for the real Ecto-1 then, if you really want class in your collection? And you know what? Maybe I will. Maybe I'll have to eat my words, but when it comes to this is that I will not buy. That's like me saying, okay, I'm going to pay $100 for the Present Toys Ecto one, and it looks like a Mazda or something. You know, that's kind of what this looks like to me. This looks really bad. This is not good. These ghost hunters. I mean, look how small the pack is on their back. That is a Spirit Halloween pack, for real. That is what that is. That is not proportionally right. And I shudder to think of the other two head sculpts because these are really, really bad. They're sculpts, but they're not my Ghostbusters. And this is a franchise I feel like people don't really fuck around with because they're too iconic. And that's the reason they're that expensive on the aftermarket, because you're not going to put some piece of shit on your shelf. Do you mind pulling up the Blitzway sculpts real quick?
Yeah, I can pull them up.
Talk?
Yeah.
Just to be able to see, like, I feel, and yes, there was a little bit drop in quality from the pre-order version down to the final, you know, the master mold down to the mass-produced version. But these head sculpts on the Blitzways are really, really good. And I will concede that the Venkman sculpt is the weakest of the four, but these are the real Ghostbusters, no pun intended, from Blitzway. So that's my opinion. I think this is a waste of money. Do not spend $150 on these, because everyone's like, well, look what they've done. You know, Present Toys has really knocked it out of the park with a lot of other things. Sure, but these are the Ghostbusters, and you can't half-ass it, in my opinion.
Okay, so you're saying this is really one of those buy nice or buy twice situations, where
Yes,
it's, you know,
I guarantee it. Yeah.
Okay, because you think people could end up regretting it, because it is a really tough one. Because kind of, maybe Kiko, you raise a really good point, and the example I'm thinking of is the Dark Side Anakin. Remember the Anna Karen that they made? The third party company,
the Chosen One or whatever,
right? And it becomes like, people are like, well, it's a good fill-in to me. Yeah. And again, look, if you want the Ghostbusters in your collection,
justify that.
If it's a budget concern, I get it, Kiko. Like, if it's a budget concern, that's a totally different equation. But if you have the means, and these are super important characters to you, I do feel it is important to get the best that you can reasonably afford. And if this is what you can reasonably afford, again, that's totally fine. You should go out and get them if you love the Ghostbusters. But to me, man, like, again, I'm not the biggest Ghostbusters fan, but as far as looking at the figures, they don't look high end to me. You know what I mean? And they're not priced high end, and I guess that's fair, right? And they're third party, they're unlicensed. But when you look at them,
look at
to
the
me,
boots, even like,
I would hate to have,
they're gonna fall right over.
Well, I would hate to have a lesser version when eventually I'm going to be like, man, I just wish I had the real thing. You know, it's kind of like, you know, buying a knockoff of a product that's really important to you. Like, if you want to buy a knockoff, like, an optical can't even speak to this, like a knockoff camera battery, not the end of the world, but you also have to deal with what that comes with. So, like, instead of having the real thing, so I don't know. Again, I love third-party figures. Some of my third-party figures are amazing, but there's not a licensed one that exists on that quality level. So, like, if there's a Hot Toys figure, I'm almost always going to choose the Hot Toys over the unlicensed if the quality is relatively consistent, you know, from Hot Toys, right? Unless the Hot Toys is absolute dog shit, which doesn't really happen very much, then, you know, it's always going to get chosen. But nonetheless, optical. What do you think about these Ghostbusters? I don't know if you're the biggest Ghostbusters fan. I know Kiko is a little more of a fan than I am. Did you see these from Present Toys?
I did. Is it just this two so far?
So
right?
far.
Okay. First and foremost, I want to say it smells like new car in here.
Yeah, right. You talking about the melon? Is that what it is?
Yeah. When I logged in, I was like, okay, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah, right. It's like, what is this thing? Yeah, right.
Too many lights, too many sounds.
Right.
Yeah, like, you're making me choose some difficult decisions here. Okay,
yeah, right.
Feel like I'm getting I'm going to a social security in here, but
you are,
dude. Like, this is okay. The tailoring is not good. Like, when I saw this, I didn't even make a video of this because I was like, I don't know. But I think we talked about this with Juice Girl. I think the last time I was here, kind of like, hey, would you get this? I guess they're a bit different than Juice Girl, because Juice Girl is a figure, and that Juice Girl is what, like around $220, and the retail for Hot Toys is around like maybe $400 now, right? If you go to eBay, you can get it for $400, $350. I get why some people would go with this because there are 4 of them. So if $700 each, for example, on eBay, that is, so, you know, that's gonna be pricey. And this is the Blitzway, right?
These are the Blitzway, yeah.
The Blitzway. I know they had some issues as well, like bodies and all that stuff back in the day with Winston and all that stuff.
Yeah,
I get it why somebody would go third-party route, but they do exist with this one. But this is kind of pricey. This is pricier than Juice Girl or Hella from Hot Toys. So I think one figure now is around $500, something like that, if not more.
Right.
So that's $2,000. So I get it, but you got to know what you're getting yourself into. like Winston has cornrows. You know, he's like,
I think that's what's so hard for me to wrap my mind around is like is that a way that they can get away with his likeness because they're like, okay, we'll just completely change his appearance to where it's not even Winston anymore.
Well,
That's
are
so
they
odd
saying
to
maybe
me.
Kiko it's an afterlife figure?
No,
Like-
because he's got like his hair is up. It's like not a fro, but like he's got a flat top in Afterlife.
Right. But he looks so much older. You're right. Optical, I don't know if you were here when Kiko said that, but he looks like this is like him now. And
Yeah,
instead of back in when Ghostbusters was what, the 80s? Yeah, it seems like it's that.
it's a little sloppy too. Like you can see from the uniform, you know, like the stitching and all that stuff.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure once you hold it in hand, things are gonna fall apart too. You know, like, oops, I can't move it this way. But hey, again, it's priced maybe 150 each. Is that how much it is? Maybe
Probably,
plus shipping. That's maybe 200, right? Let's put 200 per, including shipping. So it's 800 for the set, for example, compared to around 2200. But if you're a massive fan, like you're saying, that's gonna be hard a pill to swallow, knowing that Blitzway is out there. But it's a different story than Hella, I would say, because Hella's a figure. This is 4. So now, you know. But
And
I get
a
it.
great point you make because I know there's a lot of people because they originally released the original 3 of Ray, Egon, and Peter, and then they did the 4-pack, and then they did the single release of Winston for those other people. So there's some people sitting out there with only the 3, and Winston's sometimes the hardest to get and the most expensive. Which when I saw originally that they were teasing, that was the first one they kind of showed as the tease. I was like, well, okay, well maybe they're making this one itself to fill that hole for some collectors. And I can maybe get behind, putting 1 in your shelf to complete the display. But like you said, going all out for all 4, having 4 pieces of shit on the table as opposed to 1, that's a little harder for me to stomach.
Okay.
Yeah, and you don't realize, because I did this with The Godfather, because I didn't want to pay The Godfather from Hot Toys back then. So I did the Present Toys Godfather, which is pretty good. Like when I had it in hand, I was like, all right, it's not bad, until you see the Damn Toys one, which is more recent one, and the price wasn't too bad. Like Damn Toys was around 250. I bought that Present Toys Godfather shipped maybe around 180, almost 200. That's $50 difference. I don't know. Maybe Blitzway would do this again. I mean, I don't know. Who knows, right? Like, as they're releasing Ecto 1, it just sucks if they do that and then you bought 4. So now you just spent $800 on something that you could have had for maybe $200-300 more. So it is a gamble at this stage. So you never know,
Well, to me, Optical, I think the 2 biggest things that I'm looking at as a collector are character and quality. So, and I've said this a lot pretty much since we started streaming together, Optical, way back like 4 years ago, right? I've always said that when you look back at your collection, do you have pieces that, I feel this is important to me, do you have pieces that devalue the rest of your collection? Or like, it's basically everything at a certain bar and then you have one piece that's right here, right? That's kind of what bothers me, that lack of consistency. So to me, that's really, really important. And if that is the case, then the character better be extremely special, and I must not have another option. Like Optical, remember we bought the CC Toys Joel and Ellie, right? The reason we bought those is because those did not exist in no other company has really made them, and they're good. They're not dog shit. They're not terrible, but they're, I sold them eventually because I knew there were going to be better offerings. So that's what happened. But with the Blitzway, you do have that option. It's just super, super pricey. But, you have to factor that into consideration. And I think we had a really good question from Mr. Musashi here. So he asked, and this is a good question for you guys, would you rather have the original Venkman for $700 or this version for $200 and any 2 regular Hot Toys? And those are decisions people are thinking about. You know what I mean?
Well, that's a great question, but I don't want things just for filler, essentially. If I'm seeking,
that's how I feel.
Yeah, if I'm seeking a certain character or a certain actor, figure, likeness, whatever you want to call it, I want that one. I don't want to settle and then be like, oh, here's my knockoff Peter Venkman, but here's also 2 figures I don't really want, essentially. And maybe that's not what he's saying in the he or she's saying in the actual question, like 2 regular things in, but I don't want extra figures to replace something I really want.
That's fair. Yeah, that's understandable. Well, Guys, thank you so much for your thoughts on that one. Again, guys, let us know in the chat. I posted the poll. Is everyone going to consider picking these up? And right now we have 80% no. So I want to see, and when we post this as a clip, I want to see what people's thoughts are. Again, not trying to disparage, anyone who wants this. I don't have as much.
And I said at the beginning, I was not gatekeeping. For those people that say, hey, that's not fair, some people just want a representation of the Ghostbusters. You said it great. If this is the budget option for you, by all means, but don't sit there and say I can't afford them, but then go and spend $2,000 on other things that you don't really want. So I think that's the way I kind of look at it. That's
fair. Yeah, absolutely. Because look, if this is that important of a character to you, you'll prioritize it if the budget is available to you. Let's say that. So yeah, that's totally understandable.